You know, I guess it just depends on your enthusiasm. So I do think this is ready to go forward. I would hope that the applicant then will look at what the sticking points are and what we talked about today. And I certainly don't know exactly what the amenity should be, but if there's something that's holding this back, it will be at the public hearing, as already been mentioned. I like just a few odd, small things like leaving that right away from Kincaid for the future. I think that would really be appreciated. That's a real foresight. And the sensitivity and soundproofing from the commercial operation within a neighborhood where there's going to be a lot of residents that don't know the future of those residents that move into that site complaining. I mean, I'm already optimistic this will be successful. Now complaining about the commercial business. So it has to be a win-win for everybody, that we get an economic driver here that enhances us that way, as well as a housing and could be affordable housing as well with the smaller homes. And so I certainly think it's ready to go forward, and if the applicant has heard what we've said, then round 3 will be even better. Thank you.
Councillor Branoff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is ready to go off to public hearing. The test will be at that public hearing. There are a number of things that I do like about the project. First of all, the site is very tired. I bet you the community has more issues with it today than they would once all the soundproofing and green walls and whatnot go in. But 50% of trees will be native trees. I like the dedicated right-of-way for future access to Kincaid if that came about. I also, they did hear us about the creek and came back with some dollars towards that, but what I also heard was a 3-year plan for invasive removal, so I think that's positive as well. Solar ready. There will be an increase in traffic. Whether it's truck traffic, I don't believe as much as there could be from the housing and which way the traffic will go. I think that the sticking point for this at public hearing will be the amenity package. I would really encourage the applicant to look at completing the sidewalk out to Quadra, as opposed to Saanich picking up the balance. I don't know what that is, and that may seem a lot of money. But I do believe that the amenity package is a little light. My colleague, Councillor Wergland, I think this whole idea of community amenity contributions is top of mind right now. The provincial government's come out with some guidelines last year. Various municipalities are looking at standardizing some sort of community amenity contributions. So I would think that this needs to be looked at maybe from planning and transportation and development. But I think the whole idea of standardizing some sort of community amenity contributions, it's always been business, home, we do get different, we have over the years gotten different amenities, but maybe to make it fair for all, we establish some of it. I see in Vancouver they have a percentage that was suggested. So for the applicant, I would just say that going to public hearing, it's not a for sure thing, because more people will come out at public hearing. But I think you need to listen to what everyone has been saying about the amenity package being a little light for the size of development. And bearing in mind that technically under the local area plan, this type of commercial development wouldn't be there. But we don't want to lose the family business, because I do believe that it's definitely an amenity for Saanich to have the employees working in and around this area. So lots of things I like about the commercial building, how they're soundproofing and whatnot, but I think at the end of the day, it's your community amenity package that will have to be relooked at when they come to public hearings. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
That covers almost everybody. Councillor Platt, would you like an opportunity to speak in favour or against before I deliver my remarks?
Just for the record, I'll be speaking in favour of it. I have the same concerns that many of my colleagues have spoken to, so to be absolutely honest and respectful of the time, I don't think I'd have anything different to say. I would echo the comments made most recently about the amenities, but I'm so new at this whole amenities piece of how much do we try and extract from a developer is very uncomfortable for me. And so I also rely, for all of us as my colleagues it says, and so I rely on the staff report at this point, which did recommend it. So I take into heart what's been said, and I said I wouldn't say much, I already have, but I speak in favor of it. Going to public hearing.
Great, thank you. Much of what I was going to say has already been said. I'm going to speak in favor of moving this to public hearing as well. I think the comment that hit me the most came from Councillor Durbin about the OCP. When I look at the OCP, it's not so much a blueprint for building a new community as it's a guide for how we expand our community, how we develop it further. It's, as Voltaire said, perfect is the enemy of the good. And we have to take the theory of the OCP and we have to marry it with the practice of what can actually be built and what people are interested in building. And certainly, if we aren't interested in filling in our space in the core where we can fill it in, the development opportunity, the business opportunity, the demand for homes will leave our community and go elsewhere. And so I feel that we have to take advantage of this piece of land. I feel that it's close, but it's not quite there. But at the public hearing, I'm sure we're going to hear from the public, and perhaps the amenity package can be improved to be brought more in line with what Mr. Trania said, and or more specifically, to make sense, to do what makes sense for the community. We heard about the difficulties around the markings. I mean, it is a bicycle route, so there's an option there. There's easy access to Quadra. There's easy access to the highway. There's the Royal Oak Shopping Center nearby. There's the development in Chatterton, where there's the coffee shop I'd like to go to. So there is a lot in the area already, and I feel that if we don't send this forward, it's going to be a lost opportunity. Certainly that opportunity exists at this point to not just entertain what we've seen tonight. It has improved, and I'm very much appreciative of all the work that's gone into this version 2, and I don't see this being the end of it. I think that we can improve this some more and make this work for our community and make this work for council. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Durbin is the only one opposed. The motion carries. All right. Let's move to the next item then, which is number 2 and the last one on our pre-appointed agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is the proposed amendments to the Streamside Development Permit Area Atlas. The report of the Director of Planning is recommending the Council approve amendment to Schedule 2, which is the Streamside Development Permit Area Atlas, and also to approve amendments to Schedule 3, the Environmental Development Permit Area Atlas, both of which are Appendix N of the official community plan. The extent of the amendments are described in the report presented.
Does council have any questions of staff before we proceed? Seeing none, can we hear from the Director of Planning?
I just wanted to provide a very quick summary and offer you a presentation by Michael Roth, who's acting manager of Environmental Services, if you so wish, or you can speak to each point or question that you have. As outlined in the report, you adopted the Streamside Bylaw or Development Permit Area in 2006. Periodically, you have updates to this document, and as outlined in the report, there are 5 amendments where we'll be looking at including additional watercourses, 5 changes to watercourse alignment, which is more a housekeeping amendment. We have 1 housekeeping amendment to insert a label on an existing stream, so that truly is a housekeeping amendment. 3 features to be removed, and 1 housekeeping amendment to be removed in terms of a watercourse graphic for intertidal area. Mr. Roth can go into that in greater detail. I do want to bring to your attention on page 2 of the council report, and I'll read it verbatim. It should be noted that 2 proposed changes include the removal of habitat from the SDPA Atlas. While it has been determined these habitat features exhibit environmentally sensitive values, they do not meet the definition of a stream as outlined by the provincial riparian area regulations. The important part is that in order to maintain the habitat values of each site, in these cases in the 2 sites, it is proposed that the features to be removed from the SDPA Atlas, and they be added to the Environmental Development Permit Area Atlas. Additionally, 1 stream should be added to the SDPA is proposed to be removed from the EDPA Atlas. My next paragraph is key, and we wanted to again highlight it both in writing and verbally. is given, obviously, there's a check-in process underway for the EDPA. We wanted to acknowledge that you might be sensitive about making these changes. If you are, we are offering an alternative, which is to secure these environmentally sensitive areas through a restrictive covenant, or you could also choose not to secure them at all. Either is acceptable, obviously, to staff. We're providing you with alternatives, given that we understand that there may be sensitivity around the EDPA. With that, I would open it up to request direction whether you'd like to see a presentation from Mr. Roth on each of the amendments, and then you can ask questions as he moves through the presentation, or whether you'd just like to go to questions.
I think that's a good idea. Go ahead, Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Your Worship and Councillor. So the first series of changes here are actually additions to the Streamside Atlas, and I should clarify that these changes have come about either through requests from landowners to assess their properties to determine correct mapping information, or from qualified environmental professionals who have come to Saanich and said they work on behalf of a landowner who wishes to develop their land and would like corrections made to the water courses and their criteria. And finally, from staff information that we have, where we are aware of misinformation in the atlas where we need to correct it either through addition, changes, or removal. So the first change that we'd like to make is a change and an addition here. So what you'll see is we have the current mapping in the atlas, and the proposed changes is the addition of a watercourse that continues, that feeds into this wetland, and a more specifically defined wetland boundary. This affects the two properties as identified there, 5142 and 5164 on West Saanich Road. The next change is a removal from the Environmental Development Permit Areas Atlas and an addition to the Streamside Atlas. So it was first put into the EDPA, and we realized that it's actually just really a watercourse that feeds into the drainage here and is part of Gallard Springs. So we'd like to take it out of the EDPA and put it into the Streamside where it belongs. Next change is the Falaise Creek, Normandy drainage actually up in Falaise Road here, and this was brought to our attention through the developer's qualified environmental professional and provided with a setback according to the provincial standards for assessing the watercourses. There's a very rigorous assessment procedure established by the provincial government and endorsed by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans that determines what the setbacks have to be based on the site characteristics. This is a change that's an addition where we realise that this portion of the watercourse in the original atlas ended and in fact continues all the way up here to Limit Lane, and it's just part of the drainage very close to the roadside alignment. This is our final addition, and what we're doing here is realigning the watercourse to reflect where it truly belongs on the property. It was originally identified just as a drainage, but it does drain into the watercourse here on Durrell Creek, and therefore meets the definition of a stream under the riparian areas regulation. So now we're moving into just changes. So you may be familiar with the what used to be Babes Honey Farm there. I believe the honey farm is still there. There were significant upgrades and improvements to the watercourse carried out under the direction of a qualified environmental professional team on behalf of the landowner when they took ownership. And what we want to do is correctly identify where the watercourse sits now within the property. The next change is simply an addition of the label, which was missing from the atlas. The channel was there, the watercourse is identified already, it just did not have a name to it. And here we're similarly changing the atlas to update the watercourse location, the wetland itself, and proposing to make a change, removing the watercourse that's here adjacent to Interlochen and West Saanich, and making a smaller polygon and putting it into the environmental development permit area as an isolated wetland. 1420 Mount Douglas Creek, Mount Douglas Road is Big Barn Creek, and we've identified that this no longer belongs in the Streamside Development Permit Areas Atlas, as it's not connected. Again, it's an isolated wetland, and we wish to put it into the Environmental Development Permit Areas where it belongs, because it does not meet the definition of a stream under the riparian areas regulation. Once again, we have a wetland, and it's been identified both in the Streamside Development Permit Areas and in the Environmental Development Permit Areas. It's got a double layer, and it does not meet the definition of a stream, so we want to just leave it in the EDPA and remove it from the Streamside Development Permit Areas Atlas. Durrell Creek tributary up at 4085 Prospect Lake Road is again just properly identifying where the watercourse exists on the ground. It was mismapped either through changes, historic changes to the land itself, but this is based on current site conditions, and so we just wish to put it where it belongs on the atlas. The next series of changes are actually removals from the atlas. Again, a qualified environmental professional identified that the watercourse that we thought belonged in this property here does not exist. It was ground truth verified by Sandwich staff, so we wish to remove that so it no longer encompasses the landowner on this property. This one here is simply taking off the blue line on the atlas of Portage Inlet because they identified it within the Streamside Development Permit Area, but it's intertidal, so again it doesn't meet the definition of a stream because it's a mix of fresh water and salt water, so it belongs just as part of the Portage Road Development Permit Area. And finally, we have a property here where it was shown as being a watercourse, but in fact it's in a culvert. It was culverted quite some time ago, so we don't feel that this was an undue hardship, and we just wish to correctly identify it as being in a pipe through that portion of the property. And those are the changes being proposed for this year's amendment to the atlases. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's a question from Councillor Plant. You had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Mr. Ross, for coming tonight, presenting and sitting for 3.5 hours before we got to you. My question to you is regarding council, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Roth, and perhaps to our Director of Planning, in regards to consultation. I think everybody around this table is obviously sensitive to consultation. So where it says staff informed owners and also inform them of the council meeting as well as the fact there will be a public hearing. When we say informed, are we saying phone calls or simply letters? And are we saying registered mail or just registered to the address?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Plant, it was a combination of factors. I personally walked some of these properties and I tried to knock on doors, talk to landowners, leave my card and ask calls. We had consultants working on behalf of landowners representing their interests, so they were aware because they initiated the changes. And prior to this committee of the whole meeting, we sent letters to every homeowner affected by the proposed changes to advise them of this meeting this evening and the process, and also provided contact information in the letter. If they had additional questions, they could call and ask for clarification.
Thank you. So as a follow-up, certainly I don't expect when the applicant or the person requesting the change to be notified, because the whole point is they're instigating. But for those people for whom it's being affected, it's very broad to say affected, because some of these, for example, the Normandy Creek, as it goes along several properties. So is it possible that we're going to hear from people at public hearing who are not having been informed because a letter was the only form of contact that was offered from them?
Letters were, like I say, through the Mayor to Councillor Plant, letters were sent to every homeowner. We've attempted to make contact wherever possible. There's no guarantee ever that everybody's going to receive that letter. We do make every attempt to contact them, short of knocking on every single door and making sure we talk to every single homeowner. I should point out that in a number of these cases, these changes are in areas of the property that they're not going to be developing. These are peripheral to the edges of the property. They will affect future land use, potentially if land use changes.
I've gaining from your comments that you feel a good job has been done in consultation, and that's certainly a message that we've heard as a council thus far on anything to do with the EDPA and the revisions. So I'm happy to hear that you think an effort has been made beyond just sending letters. Thank you.
Councillor Sanders?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, these are 14 changes, and I was the previous environment chair. And now, these property owners would know that what the current situation is already. They would have been notified originally when we did the streamside development. What is it called?
The streamside development.
Yeah, so they already are aware that they have this on the property. That's correct.
Through council, through mayor to councillor Saunders. Yes, originally when the legislation was adopted in 2006, I believe every homeowner was notified at that time, just as we did with the environmental development permit areas notification. We tried to reach out to every single homeowner and at least inform them. And there was a public process at that time for adopting the atlas, public hearings, and I believe at least one, if not two, open houses. It predates my time with Sandwich, but I'm pretty sure there was at least one.
I remember that when I was chair. And also, this isn't unusual that we over the years have had these changes come to us before.
Correct. I believe this is maybe the fifth time since 2006 that we updated the atlas. We try to keep it as current as possible, to be as reasonable as possible to the landowner that's impacted by anything on their property.
Yes, I remember some we found they were culverts, and they were, you know, they were either end, but in the middle weren't there. Thank you.
Councillor Haynes, quickly.
Just quickly, I commend this stewardship of our waterways and land. I would like to follow up on Councillor Platt's comment. The houses that you sent a letter to, the houses that you knocked on, and you worked to get the information to the residents. Is there any mechanism that we could think of where there would be a little chart or table where you could tick a box and say, yes, they got it? And I'm wondering if we said, okay, there's 20 houses or 10 houses, how many confirmed that they received the information? Because it doesn't seem to me that it would take that great an effort to have some sort of log. You could say, yes, we know they got it, and there was a confirmation phone call. Even the letter could ask for a confirmation call. I just wondered if there's an appetite for that level of diligence.
You absolutely can do that. There's many mechanisms, double registered letters. It just really depends on if you start it, it will roll elsewhere, and it does have implications in terms of monetary decisions that you'll have to make in the future. It's a valid idea, and we can absolutely deliver that.
Thank you.
Just quickly, just from my own experience knocking on doors in the last 5 years or so, it often takes 3 visits to actually get somebody at the door you can speak to. Imagine calling's difficult. People are at plays and movies and things like that at night. We don't have access to a lot of cell phones and numbers and so forth. But even after 3 attempts, you know, the return is poor. You have to put in a huge amount of effort to get the last few people there. So, you know, I wonder maybe we could discuss this some other time and figure out what's going to be satisfying for us, because we're not going to get everybody here, but we'd like to get the majority of people here that can weigh in a decision. That'd be nice. All right, thank you, Mr. Ron. All right, with that, I'm going to ask members of the public to come to speak, and hopefully that nice lady that came up earlier that sit down will come first.
A long time ago.
Yes, I hope you find our seats comfortable if you're not.
No,
please
not
tell
at
us.
all.
Good, I think so.
My name is Lillian Bursink. I live at 818 Royalwood Place. And I'm having a couple of problems here. I contacted Saanich in the fall of last year, I think November or December, because we had a big storm and one of the trees was quite leaning, which is on the other side of the creek, or they're going to make a creek, right? It's on the other side of the creek, and it's leaning now. It was straight up when I moved there, and it's now totally leaning over my fence. I've had my gardener cut branches off it, which I pay for, and I've called Saanich, and then the answer I got, somebody did come and look right away, and they said it's not on their property. Okay, I thought that was fine. Then in January there was a meeting with McCall's, because they're developing the property behind me there, and they have, they're going to develop it, and they're going to clean it up and all this and that, and nothing happened. I spoke to Scott Murdoch, who's the developer, I guess, the landscape developer for McCall's. And I spoke to him a couple of times, and he did come out, and everybody comes out when I'm not home, even if I tell them when I'm home. And so they cut off 2 branches and left me a message on my answering machine. I phoned it back and said that was definitely not the idea. And he said, well, he would look at it later. So then they started in July, they started developing the property, they cleared it totally, and it's going to look wonderful because I have no objections to the project at all, because it's going to look nice back there. But they haven't done anything about the trees there. And I know they want to keep some of them, which I'm fine with too, but this particular one is going to fall on my fence. And nobody's doing anything about it. So a week ago, or a week and a half ago, I phoned, I think I spoke to Michael Roth. Did I speak to you? Or you left me a couple of messages. Again, I said I would be home by 12:30 and everybody phones me at 10 or 11, so I haven't spoken to you at all. So I ended up phoning Scott Murdoch, and he said, well, you know, they would prune it a little bit. So a week and a half, the Saanich fella came, I think his name is Brian, he was very nice, and I showed him the problem, and he said, well, the tree needs to be topped, minimum, because he's too weighty on the top, and he said part of it's rotted at the bottom. So I would really appreciate it for somebody to remove that thing. And then on the other side, there is another tree, among some trees, which is either partially dead or totally dead. So it's going to be a problem. So then Brian went to the developers from McCall's, and he spoke to some arborists there, he said, and he phoned me back, and he said they had marked the tree, and in 7 or 10 months, they are going to look at it and prune it, which is totally illogical and is after the fact, because in the meantime, the tree can be fallen over on my property. And, you know, why not do it while they're clearing everything? By the time they have it all finished, he said they would do it when they're finished. So they would have the paving done, the building is done, the landscaping is done, and then you think they're going to remove a tree which is standing on the other side of the property? I don't think so, you know. So they're all trying to, you know, make me disappear, I think, but they're all passing the buck. So now my main question here after this big spiel is who is going to be responsible if it's going to be a creek and the tree comes down? Because I saw on the maps that it was not Saanich property, it was McCall's property, but if it is a creek, is it going to be then in Saanich property? So who is going to be responsible, because I'm not paying for it? That's my spiel. So I just want to know who's responsible if the tree comes down.
Thank you, that's a very good question, but without knowing the exact location of the tree, I'm going to...
Well, I make pictures, but I didn't bring my iPad. But, you know, I did make pictures, because everybody's passing the buck, right?
No,
nobody's
okay.
taking responsibility.
I'm not making excuses, I'm just going to pass it over to our staff for better understanding of what happens when these trees fall into these areas, so that we can understand how best to serve you.
Through the Mayor and Council, Mr. Bussing, I believe we did speak a couple of times regarding your tree and the concerns. We did face
In the fall, I did speak to you, yes.
Just in the last month, I think we spoke a couple of times, and
Okay.
you had a visit from our Storm and Waste group, Brian.
Yeah, Brian was there, yes, yes.
And I believe I asked him to pop out and take a look on your
He
behalf.
did, yes,
He
yes.
spoke to you, and he also, I believe, spoke to McCall's.
Yeah.
And agreed that they would monitor the tree at this time to see how much it's moving, if at all, how it's doing, and to take action based on what they see going on. And I believe also based on McCall's own consultant team and the landscape work they're going to do in that area to improve stormwater drainage. So it's definitely something that Saanich is taking on your behalf to look at and trying to manage. But we tend not to jump in and take out vegetation until we're sure there's nobody else is going to do that, in this case the developer. And
Yeah, but the developer is shoving it off too, because I spoke to Murdoch, right? And he says, well, he couldn't cut trees down there. He wasn't allowed. So I mean, who is a responsibility and who's allowed to do anything there, right? That's my question. Because I understand what you're saying, and according to the plans, it is on their property. So I totally see that. But if it's becoming a creek, is it then going to be Saanich property? Because I got in the letter or something it said, or somebody speaking to me, that it is 30 feet or 20 feet is from the bank of the creek.
If I can just take over, that was my actual original question. Is this tree landing in Saanich's purview, or is it going to remain with the developer? Please.
The tree would remain the property owner's responsibility. what Sanesh is doing is trying to broker a solution for you as quickly as possible with acknowledging the retention of the tree, and we will continue to do so.
Yeah, please, thank you, because I just think, to wait until something happens is not very proactive, right? I mean, anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Please come forward. Yes, please.
My husband and I represent the owners of 5142 Old West Saanich, which is the very first property you mentioned.
Thank you. Could you give us your name and your address?
Pam Harrison, Leo Polowich, and we're at 5142 Old West.
Thank you.
And my question, probably for Mr. Roth, is simply, we're aware of the initial drawing of the wetland at the back of our property, and we looked and compared the new one and see the addition of the creek at the very north. We didn't initiate, we have no objection at face value. We think it looks like it's drawing it more accurately. But we didn't initiate the request. We haven't had anybody come onto the property to do an on-the-site check. So I just wondered how it happened. Was it air photos, or was it, and might there still be latitude for fine-tuning it?
Thanks. Yeah, this isn't really a question and answer period, but given that Mr. Roth gave a presentation earlier, and I'd just be calling him up to answer some of these questions, I'm going to entertain some of this if council's all right with it. You see that? All right, Mr. Roth? Or Director of Planning, please.
Through the mayor and council. So I visited your property. There was nobody home at the time.